Evolutionists use a lot of teleological language to explain how evolution works. Here's an example. These epigenetic mechanisms evolved by natural selection to enable genes to exhibit conditional behavior. That infinitive form, to enable and to exhibit, is the tip-off. It's often used in the teleological language where natural selection and evolution have a final cause, a purpose, a goal. There's some reason why something is evolving. Here, the epigenetic mechanisms are evolving to enable genes to exhibit conditional behavior. This is all phony science. This is a massive internal contradiction because evolution disallows any such teleology. But in order to explain evolution, they often resort to this language. So a red flag should pop up for you every time you see this teleological language in the literature. Some evolutionists are concerned about this teleological language. Why is it so pervasive? Jamie Freestone came out with a paper recently giving an explanation why evolution itself isn't teleological, but the writing about it is. So he's trying to explain this. I reviewed this paper. You can see my review there. Basically, Freestone is going to try and make the point that the teleological language is unavoidable in the evolutionary literature. It would be difficult to write a popular introduction to evolutionary science without resorting to at least some form of teleology for ease of reading. It may be impossible for stricter formal reasons, he writes. Specifically, grammar makes it easiest to relate actions as being performed by agents, even inanimate ones, rather than being self-caused or uncaused. I like that particular passage because here Freestone is admitting that evolutionary theory does call for an uncaused or self-caused world. Skipping down, just as language is infused with our propensity to see events in agential terms, so too is the narrative form. You just can't avoid it. It would seem to be impossible to avoid the teleology found in colloquial texts. Skipping down, teleology on the most severe view is unavoidable in any prose explanation of evolution. Continuing, our minds and our languages simply did not evolve to deal with totally agentless systems. So right away you can see in this passage here that Freestone and this paper have a commitment to evolution. He's talking about our minds evolving in spite of the scientific evidence. So Freestone is a committed evolutionist in spite of the science. But next, what do you see? To deal. Did you catch that? Did the red flag go up for you? The infinitive form. So here in this paper about the teleological language and how unavoidable it is, he's trying to make this point. He himself resorts to teleological language in explaining why the literature cannot avoid teleological language. Hilarious. Now, I'm going to show you a passage from this book, Scientists Confront Creationism. Now, there's nothing special about this particular volume. I'm going to show you a passage from Chapter 7 written by a molecular biologist, Thomas Jukes. But this passage here is interesting because why? Let's have a look. Natural selection not only weeds out harmful mutations, it is also an agent of beneficial change. Did you see that? An agent. Natural selection is an agent. Now, that's not the infinitive form, but it is an example of teleological language. Yet another example of teleological language, the ubiquitous teleological language in the literature. So I hope a red flag went up for you there. But let's continue on because something interesting happens in the next couple of sentences. This is a natural consequence of the fact that not all mutations are harmful. Aha, now this is a good empirical scientific statement. Nothing teleological here. Continuing, a mutation that produces an improvement in some characteristic of a living organism will enable its offspring to compete successfully with other members of the species for survival. There's nothing teleological there. So why am I pointing this out? Because it shows that teleological language is not required in spite of Freestone and his paper, the claims that he is making. Teleology is not unavoidable in a prose description of evolution. It is simply very, very common. but it's not necessary as Freestone would have us believe. Remember, he says it's unavoidable. No, what is unavoidable is phony teleological language when trying to make origins by chance sound plausible. Religion drives science, and it matters.